Hey, this is Demitri with the Demitri team. I want to take an opportunity to kind of walk you through a listing agreement, things that you should know, whether you're listing with us or you're listing with another realtor. You need to know this information so that it'll give you some power, some, I don't know, the knowledge to make sure that you are being best represented. Your needs are being taken care of. So let's jump into it. A lot of times I know you're going to see your listing agreement, and that listing agreement is coming from the Florida Bar. They wrote it for the Florida Real Estate Association. It's for all realtors to use across the entire state of Florida. You know basically that it is because if you look at the bottom of each page, it basically tells you that it's Florida Realtors when it was done. On the left side, it tells you the revision, and they always have a number, exclusive right to sale, 18 TB. So you know that. And then the thing we're going to talk about first is right here, this little section. And in that section, what we are going to look at is the fact that there's this word, termination date. It's a very important word. This date and the fact that it is the termination date is very significant in this document, and I'm going to show you the next place where that is. So in section 8, we talk about what you're going to pay us. So typically, if we're doing a listing, I'm going to put 6% in here is what you're going to pay me for my commission on the property for the listing price. Typically, I usually put none and none here, and the reason for that is that we're not really looking at getting an option or renting your house unless we've talked about that ahead of time. Then I may put something. Otherwise, I'm putting none, and what I'm expecting to do is sell your house, get a 6% commission. The thing you need to be aware of is here, because I've had quite a few clients that I have gone to after they've listed with somebody that it has either expired or they have canceled that listing and they find that they're stuck. And here's where they're stuck. This says that at any time you owe the agent who listed your property a commission if you sell it. And if you sell it in the time of the contract or within X number of days after termination date. Okay, so typically I will tell you this: hey, I want 30 or 60 days in this number because I'm going to go out, I'm going to market it. Somebody that I show might not buy it today, but we showed it and it happens to expire this Friday, and next Tuesday they decided, hey, that house we saw last week we really love, we want to buy it. Well, I get protected for 30 to 60 days. I prefer my 60-day period in here. Sometimes we go out 90 days on that, but you will find that a lot of the agents put 90 days in this. But it's important to know termination date 90 days after. Okay. Now here's the next thing. So you did that property and you sold it. No matter how it got sold, before the termination date. All right, so here's the thing. So anytime the property is sold, so let's assume that you had your listing, you were unhappy with the agent for whatever reason, you gave them a notice, hey, I want to cancel my listing. They're going to say, fine, I'm going to give you the conditional and I'm going to show you why that is. However, in their thing, let's assume that you signed this to go until December 31st of the year and it's now October, right? Well, this says that you owe them, regardless of how it is sold, all the way up to within the termination date and X number of days after that termination date, you owe them a commission, regardless of how you got it sold, regardless of the fact that you canceled it. It doesn't really matter. The next part is down here, the very last piece. It says that the property before termination date, however, no fee will be due if the property is relisted after termination date. So that's relisted after termination. So let's say you started August 1st, you went until 12/31. In October 1st, you told your agent you weren't happy, they weren't doing the things that you felt they were supposed to do or that they had agreed to do in here, and you were terminating the contract. They gave you a release. Well, they're now protected all the way up until that termination date, as well as the days after, unless, of course, you relist with me. Now, let's say you relist with me October 15th because you released them on October 1st. Well, the reality is that I listed, I put it out there, we get it sold. You have to pay them. not just me, but you got to pay them as well, because the relisting only helped you after the termination date, not after the cancellation date. Remember this word I told you, termination date, is very important in here. So because December 31st hasn't come around, that termination date happened. So if you listed with me and I sold it January 1st, then you'd be safe, because that did happen after the termination date of their contract. So important piece to understand. All right, let's look at the next part, and that is conditional termination. This is where they say, hey, look, you got a termination. Anytime you're not happy, just tell me and I'm going to release you out of this. However, in this termination, it says right here that we can void this, but the seller will pay the fee stated in paragraph 8, and that's if we had a cancellation fee, which I always put 0, or if the seller transfers or contracts to transfer the property to any interest during the time period from the date of conditional termination, so let's say that October 1st, to the termination date, which would be December 31st, because remember, that was what you signed in the contract right there, paragraph 1, and the protection period, if applicable. That means you hadn't listed it with somebody else during that period. So I want to tell you about that so that you make sure this wording works in your interest, and you probably put some additional terms, or you strike some parts out of this, so that when you cancel, and that there is a protection period for them, for the people that they brought, not just anybody off the street. Let's look at the last thing. I'm going to come back to the protection thing in a second. Broker relationship. There in the state of Florida, there are 3 relationships. We either have a single agent, which means as a single agent, I'm selling your house. The only person that I can represent is you. I cannot represent the buyer. Not only can I not represent the buyer, no one within my brokerage can represent the buyer, because our duty fiduciarily is to you. We are supposed to make sure you get, that everything in your financial interest is to your best, okay? A transaction broker says, hey, look, I'm going to do everything fairly and honestly. However, I'm going to let you, Mr. Seller, and you, Mr. Buyer, make sure from your financial piece that you're in charge of that yourself. You're not looking to me to be that financial expert and tell you, hey, this was the best price, or all of that. You're looking at me to make sure I got the paperwork, I brought the buyer, I got everything done. Everybody, for the most part, is happy. Usually everybody's happy. Sometimes there's little things that do happen that people go, oh, I really didn't like that part, or I didn't understand it, or whatever, but we get through those things. The last is no brokerage relationship. So sometimes that is, hey, you just want me to put it up on the MLS. You're going to handle everything yourself. My job was just to put it up on the MLS for you and get a fee, right? We utilize transaction broker, but I want you to be aware of this. So when you're doing a listing contract, understand what type of relationship you have with your agent and that broker. Okay. All right, let's go back to this part here, this conditional termination. So in every contract, there is additional terms. So you go back to the bottom of this contract and you're going to see additional terms. And you can clearly put out here on additional terms that the termination date is, if you do the conditional termination, that the conditional termination date replaces the termination date of the contract, or becomes the termination date of the contract. And that's really what you want. You want whatever conditional termination that you have provided, that you're now unhappy, you are terminating this, that becomes the termination date for the contract. So you want to make sure that is understood. In our agreement, we always look at it and say, hey, if you were not happy with us, we're going to let you out. That's not a problem. What we do ask that you do is that you protect us for the people that we brought. In other words, if I brought, Bill, and I brought Joe, and I brought Adam and Mary, and if I brought those people at the time of the termination, we're going to provide you a list, and we're going to say, here's the people that we provided to you that looked at your house, that should they come back and buy the house during this time frame, that we get paid. And I think that's totally fair. We marketed for that. We found those people. We brought them to you. We should get paid. We should not get paid for people that just happen to find your house later just because we had you sign an agreement that said, here was the dates, and then we did not perform the service that you were looking for, which caused you to do the uh, the conditional termination. And here's the other thing. I would tell you that one of the easiest ways to do this is in this listing agreement, 30 days, 60 days at the most. Do a 30-day listing, do a 60-day at the most listing agreement. If in 30 days things haven't happened and you're happy with me, there is no reason why we can't do an addendum to this to extend the termination date to another 30 days. It's a very simple piece of paper. It's an addendum. We just say, seller and broker agree to extend the listing contract where the new termination date is such and such. All other provisions and everything remain. Very simple thing. Keeps us both honest. Make sure that everybody does their job. All right. I hope this helps you in making a decision the next time you go to sell your house. I hope it brings some light on some stuff if you have had some issues or misunderstandings about your listing agreement. And if you ever have any questions, certainly I feel free to reach out to us. This is Demitri with the Demitri team. Hope you have a great day.